Last time I tried to record the video, I screwed up with the sound. I couldn't understand myself what I was rambling there. This is my second attempt to record, to reflect on what happened during this terrible year. But because I'm pentalingual and two of the languages I speak are Russian and Ukrainian, that's why I know probably more than most English-speaking people do about this, what is happening in Ukraine now during this year. So that's my reflection of what I see and what I understand about it. The dictator of neighboring country, I always forget his name, Putla, pervert, well, we call him Huylo. It's hard to translate, but whatever. That individual, 70 years old, invaded into neighbor country in attempt to proprietize it. You know, Russia is his own property for a long time, for 20 years probably. And Russians don't mind because those who are in Moscow feel good. Those who are outside of Moscow don't matter, or if they are happy, nobody cares about them. But Russians in general didn't protest that. Some people did, some smart or advanced people, but the number of them was not enough. And in Belarus, the number was enough, but still, with support of Russia, and because protesters were very peaceful, didn't possess any weapons, nothing at all, they couldn't achieve the goal which they attempted. February 20, he made a speech, 2022 by the way, he made a speech justifying what he is about to do, which he prepared already for 1 month. He brought the forces, military forces, army to the border of Ukraine, and this was all hidden as joint training of Belarus and Russia. But in fact, all the intelligence of the West reported that the invasion is being prepared. And at that speech, he justified what he did later. This decision was already made. It was just executed later. And in that justification, he said that Ukraine is wrong country. It was created by Lenin and stuff like that, which is fake history. It's not true. Ukraine existed long before Russia. Its name was Kievskaya Rus, Kiev Rus. It was renamed later as Ukraine. And what is now Russia is a Moscow country which started to expand and colonize to the east, and it's not descendant of Kievskaya Rus. And most of the territories were acquired when Katerina was the queen. She's German origin, queen of Russia, which made all those political things and built up the country, which now they claim that Ukraine didn't exist, but in fact Russia didn't exist when Ukraine did. This individual read some books sitting in pandemic in isolation, was very bored, and decided to make a history, to change the history. The plan was to take Ukraine in 3 days, and it was written, and they didn't even prepare for longer battle. All the supplies they had were for 3 days. That's why when this plan failed, they had to move back away from Kiev. And interesting, when geopolitics carried out without plan B, it's impossible in the West. You probably can't understand that. But in Russia, fortunately, that's the way it is. There is one dictator who makes decision, who doesn't have plan B, and he just does it. And this is very dangerous because this individual is not very smart. He might be sick, mentally ill, and nobody is there to stop him. You know what Donald Trump tried to do, by the way, he's a puppet of that dictator too. His project, he invested into him. But he didn't have that much power to do those that amount of trouble in a society like that, where president is limited. So the power of any single individual is limited. Unfortunately, that's not the case with autocrat system, especially this one, Russian one, which built for one individual. When that individual is gone, this whole system is gonna collapse, because it was built, all the balance is on that individual. Without that individual, all the parts which the system is built of is gonna fight with each other. So he intentionally built it this way, that the system is impossible without him. So this guy invaded neighboring country in attempt to take it in 3 days. It didn't work, even though even Western intelligence and specialists said that Kyiv is gonna fall in 3 days. It didn't happen, and after that he started to justify it differently, like we had no choice. A whole bunch of conspiracy theories showed up, and people who believed in anti-vax stories, that Bill Gates or some other people conspired to install chips into people and to reduce population. All people who believe that kind of trash now started to believe that West was preparing something in Ukraine to invade Russia, to put some disease carrying wild animals projects and this kind of trash. Well, people in Russia do believe these kind of things, and propaganda showing this 24/7. It's like in Orwell's book 1984. People just believe that because it's being said over and over. And when you hear it all the time and you don't hear alternative, because older generation cannot use alternative. Unfortunately, my grandparents also couldn't use internet and didn't watch YouTube. They just don't do that. They just turn on the television and they watch what it shows. And in Russia, it shows only this trash nowadays. So there's the only thing you can watch, this propaganda, which makes no sense. It's exactly Orwell 1984 type of lies all the time. Like Russia is defending, Russia is being attacked, and we had no choice but to invade that, and this kind of propaganda. Invasion happened before, so the war started in 2014 actually, when puppet president of Ukraine ran for hills. And at that time, what happened is Ukraine stayed for some time without government, and this dictator, this autocrat, used this moment to annex Peninsula, which is very important for strategic purposes. So there is a military base in there, and he also invaded all the parts he could of Ukraine. In Odessa, it didn't work. In Odessa, it was stopped. In other two regions, unfortunately, it did work, even though they didn't annex them directly at that time, but they did it later, by the way. But at that time, in 2014, they just sent their troops there unofficially. So those troops didn't even carry official titles. One of them was Stelkov Girkin, which brought book. It's a ground air system, the rocket system, which shut down MH17 Malaysian Airlines passenger aircraft. They thought it's military aircraft, they shut it down, so they committed even that crime, killing hundreds of people. And this was the beginning of invasion into Ukraine. And full-scale invasion happened late 2022, when they prepared already to take it over. There is individual there very close to autocrat, whose name is Prigozhin, who created his own army well, this is totally illegal. There is a law against organized criminal groups. This is what exactly this is. This is not security companies. This is not like that. This is military organization with helicopters, with tanks, with jet airplanes. They started to take prisoners from jails without a law. So they secretly were coming to jails and taking anybody who agreed to go with them and send them to the war. So the criminals who served 20 years, 15 years for murder or whatever, they were sent to the war as soldiers. And this is what started to happen. So they didn't obey any laws. And moreover, they started to modify existing laws, which they don't obey anyway, but they started to make them persecutions on a wide scale for anybody opposing this war. So this war was called special military operation. Anybody who called this actually a war in Russia was persecuted. So people got jail time, 15 years, 10 years for calling this thing a war. So officially it's called military operation, and there is a introduced new law in 2022 where you are not allowed to call this way, and you are not allowed to discredit military operation. So anything you say which is not good on their opinion, you go to jail for that. So those in the West who think that, like, hey, this is they are goods, they fight against West, against CIA evil, so they are actually good. They don't understand that this is pure evil. This is autocracy, not even autocracy. This is dictatorship, and this is oral type of 1984 type of situation. And if the CIA or NSA did some shitty things in the past, maybe even do it now, but they are not on that scale. It's just one organization which commits something. But here, there is the whole world is. It's even worse than China. It's in direction of North Korea. So when you oppose your own government or your own society and support this kind of thing, North Korea or Russia, whatever, you gotta be careful, because if they win, the war is gonna be different. It's gonna be much worse place. So this is very important, because if you fight with evil against evil, but support some pure evil, which is much worse, you're not making things better. The same happened in Cold War, for example. Yes, there is no black and white, there is no pure evil and pure goodness, but actually pure evil exists. So there's not to support that. And if you take their agenda and if you bring it to the West, and if you advocate them, then you are together with them and you're supporting pure evil. This Prigozhin individual created a whole bunch of other organizations, not only this Wagner troop or Wagner military illegal organization. He also created trolls organization, for example, and hackers organization. So they interfered in elections in the United States, but I don't care about that. This troll organization is putting comments in all important videos. So any video which becomes popular, they come in there and start to post comments in there, pro Putin, pro North Korea, whatever. So their activities all the time, they put this agenda, and they do it on it's their daily job. There are 1,000 people who are sitting in the office with a computer, and all their job is to write comments. Putin is good and West is bad. This conspiracy, all this agenda which they are, like Russia Today, for example. Do you know that Russia Today has budget bigger than any Russian city except for Moscow? There's a huge amount of money put into these things which are destructive, which are bad for the world, which make the world worse place. Unfortunately, not mention the war and all the weapons they did. Yeah, fortunately, they are so much corrupt. The Russian military was so much corrupt that they couldn't even create the strong army. So West overestimated the capabilities of Russian army because they didn't understand how much corrupt they are and that they stole everything rather than develop really strong army, which they tried and they claimed to have.
The truth from me until today. The truth is, I won't stop after destroying Ukraine's independence and challenging the free world. My master plan is to restore the Soviet Empire. The truth is that I've gone too far to stop myself now. And I didn't see a reason to stop if you let me get away with it. The truth is, I'm bombing civilian homes, innocent women and children. The truth is that I'm a terrorist. And I will continue to terrorize the whole world. That I always attack the weak. That the only language I truly understand is force. If you show it, I'm done.
I think to understand what is really happening in Russia, you need to understand how this dictator came to power. So, the first president of Russia after collapse of the Soviet Union was Boris Yeltsin, which was alcoholic and corrupt individual with family busy with corruption and opening foreign bank accounts. So the family was planning to move away from Russia into the West and being rich there. So they were not interested in economy and in Russia in general. And general prosecutor of that time, Skuratov, started to investigate on that. And he found about foreign bank accounts. He started to report about them. But KGB, FSB, or which it became, it was renamed after Soviet Union collapse. FSB had compromising material on him with two women, and they put this video on television during the midday time, even though the video is definitely not for children. And this way they discredit that general prosecutor and silence him to stop this investigation about Yeltsin's family. And as a gratitude for that, Yeltsin made Prime Minister this dictator, later dictator, Huylo, how we call him. And he did that as a gratitude for what he did, this compromising video. And there were really good alternatives for that, but he chose this one because he was totally corrupt. And now they say like he's he's a completely different thing. Look at what did Yeltsin, and look what this guy did. Well, this guy is Yeltsin's guy, all right? Yeltsin put him in power. But Russians normally don't remember that or ignore that completely. And after coming to power, he was not popular. He's ex-KGB, now FSB agent. He was not popular at all. That's why they started terrorist attacks in Russia. Some buildings were exploded. 4 buildings in different cities, 2 of them in Moscow. And one of the explosions was prevented by local police. And when they found hexagon, they think this explosive material, which looked like spaghetti, not spaghetti, but looked like macaroni. And those sacks were carried into the basement, but this explosion was prevented. And after they captured it, The FSB came, shut down everything, take away evidence, and say this was training. Well, training don't happen secretly, do they? But they get away with that. They say this was training, this was not really explosion. But explosions in Russia stopped immediately after that. So after this failure of explosion, they didn't carry it out anymore. But still, this produced fear and hatred in the country. And this guy showed up like strong man, like, hey, I'm gonna solve this, I'm gonna kick their asses. He literally said, if we catch them in toilet, we're gonna kill them right in toilet. That's literally what he said. And in Russian criminal language, this what he said sounded especially criminal, or especially not really official type of language people use, especially politicians. But he became popular though, like this Trump kind of thing, this populist speech, like, hey, I'm gonna kick their asses, I'm strong man, let's show them what we are, let's make Russia great again, or something like that. All this populist stuff did work on the population, and they elected him, and he was very popular. And until invasion of 2022, he was very popular. And for annexing Crimea, he became even more popular than before. So people were happy. We have Crimea back. So Skuratov was silenced. The guy who did this operation of silencing Skuratov came to power with some explosions and some war in Chechnya. They made him popular, and he became eternal president. Fortunately, nobody lives forever, and this guy also not immortal. So this thing is gonna end, and he already seems to be sick. He has a bunch of doubles, bunch of people who look very similar to him. They were elected in the government of Russia. There is some scheme, some bunch of people who really run the country. They are agents, of course. This is FSB head, and they found all over the country people who look similar to that dictator, and they use them all over the place. When he's not isolated, not sitting at a long table away from anybody else, when he's in public close to other people, that's a double. Because the real one is very coward. He is not coming close to anybody. Even though ladies, half of them which are agents of security service, they were not allowed to come too close to him. So they made this video editing with blue screen, with chroma key.